On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, we talk with a survivor named Bailey. And Bailey was in a 27-year toxic marriage to a controlling narcissist. It's a story of financial abuse, secrets, taking responsibility, and an amazing daughter. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, a podcast that gives a voice to survivors of toxic relationships. I am Brandon Chadwick, but my friends call me Chad. And thanks for tuning into this episode. So what is a narcissist, you may ask? Well, for the purposes of this podcast, we refer to a narcissist as anyone who has displayed a pattern of behavior that shows a limited capacity to appreciate others' perspectives. It's that simple, everyone. And now, before we get to our episode with Bailey, I just first want to thank everyone in the Narcissist Apocalypse community for listening to the show and sharing your thoughts by email, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Also, a reminder, if you haven't left us a review on whatever podcast service you use, Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, Castbox, etc., please leave us a 5-star written review, as it helps out the show a lot when it comes to rankings. Now, if you have not been to our website recently, please do go there if you want to be part of our show. At narcissistapocalypse.com. When you get there, top of the page, there's a button that says guest form or something like that. I have no idea because I've gone a little crazy today. And you press that button. You go to the guest form. You fill it out. We go from there. But another way to be part of our show is to go to narcissistapocalypse.com and to read a letter to your narcissist. To do that, there's a button there. It's on the side of the page. It says send voicemail. You click that button, it records up to 5 minutes. You need more than 5 minutes, you click it twice, 3 times, as many times as you need. That is for our letters to our narcissist compilation episode. However, if you do not want to read the letter yourself, just send us an email with your letter to narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com, and myself or my old pal Melissa will read your letter for you. Other things on our site. We're now offering high conflict parenting courses that can be found at narcissistapocalypse.com/courses. Yes, we have now partnered with an online parenting company, and many of the courses we are offering are created by Bill Eddy. And if you listened to our episode last year with a divorce lawyer named Helen, you'll know that Bill Eddy is an expert in dealing with these individuals in court, and now he's helped create many parenting courses to help you through divorce and to help your children too. These courses are the most widely recognized courses by family courts across the country. So if you want to support the show and are looking for guidance, please do go to narcissistapocalypse.com/courses. But do you know what else supports the show? Our Patreon, everyone. Yes, we started a Patreon. If you want to hear episodes that never made it to air, follow-up episodes with former guests, and much, much more, join our Patreon. We'll be releasing new content on there all the time. So to help support the show, become a patron of our Patreon at patreon.com/narcissistapocalypse. Woo, almost there, folks. We're almost done. Before we get to the show, before we start the show, I just wanted to say that this story is somewhat complex for how simple it sounds. A whole other part of the story and the types of trauma are revealed in the last quarter of this episode, and I did tear up during those parts. So if I cried, then you might need some Kleenex too when it comes to the end of this episode. Also, there are a few sound issues. And I hope this episode doesn't sound disjointed because we recorded for about 2.5 hours, and this version is somewhere in the 1 hour and 30 minute to 1 hour and 45 minute range. This episode has taken me 8 hours to edit, and technically I'm kind of not done right now until I finish this little intro and then press a couple buttons. So it's been a long day. That's why I'm acting a little wacky right now. I've gotten a little crazy. I've been sitting in front of my computer for a while, but I really want to thank Bailey for being on the show in advance. She was very vulnerable and did a great job. So I just want to thank her. I hope I did you justice with how I edited it. And now it's time for the show. Here is my conversation with Bailey. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. With me today, I have Bailey. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. We just had a little bit of a chat. It's early in the morning, kinda. For some people it is. For some people it's not. And I'm just going to get out of my way and your way, Bailey. The floor is now yours.
Well, thank you very much. I guess I should start with how it all began. I'm actually 50 years old now, and I met my ex when I was 18. So looking back, I think, geez, that was just so young. And when we talk about red flags, there absolutely were red flags. But I remember being 18, and I didn't know myself. I didn't have any boundaries, zero. And I think that came from being raised in the house that I was raised in. My mom and I didn't really have a overly close relationship. I wanted to be close with her, but she was always sort of standoffish and not very loving, I guess. But she came from a large family, and I found all of my aunt and uncles the same, so you just sort of raised that way and you don't think about things. So I met this man when I was 18, and it just makes me laugh because the night I met him, he was inebriated, and he rambled on and on about a friend of his parents had filed a small claims court judgment against him because he had done some work for him and didn't complete the work. And not only didn't complete the work, but accused him of stealing some tools. And, of course, the empath in me just went right to, oh, my goodness, like, who would do that? Like, so anyways, we had our first date, and I sort of let it go. But I met him through a friend, and she contacted me and said, would you consider going out with him again? And I really don't know why I said yes. Because I feel like at that time I was a confident person. Looking back, I realized I just had zero boundaries. Like I just thought that's the way I was treated, and I just accepted anything into my life. And so we did go out again, and, of course, this time he was sober, and the love bombing was crazy. My kids today cringe when I tell them that, within 2 weeks he loved me, and I was beautiful, and I was perfect, and I was all of these things, and he brought me flowers all the time. And even he would show up at my work. And now looking back, to me, that's a boundary I wouldn't allow today. Like, my work is very important to me. It's never been spectacular, but I've always been a hard worker, and that was my therapy. Like, I'm an overachiever when it comes to my job, and now I would not allow that. Like, don't show up at my work, and definitely don't call me at my work. But he would show up at my work, and usually with flowers, again, how was your day? Very attentive. How was your day? Oh, and very, very interested now looking back, and he's been like this through our whole marriage, very interested in conflict, and really on board with me, like, oh, this person did this to you, and I guess in the last 10 years of our marriage, I realized, like, how blown out of proportion he makes things. Like, can't someone just have a bad day? Can't somebody, just have something about them,
So,
and I've learned
so what you're saying is that
early on, he was really trying to point out maybe how people might have wronged you here, or look how they treated you there, as if he was watching out for your best interest.
Exactly. And looking back now, I totally see that. But at the time, because I was, insecure, and like I said, I didn't really get a lot of attention from my parents. I thought he was, so attentive and right on board with everything I did. And even though I didn't agree with his perspectives, like, he would say something, and at that point I was still strong enough just to slough it off and think, I know the person didn't mean it that way. But I always felt compelled to tell him this nonsense. That's one thing I stopped doing the last 5 years of our marriage. Like, and then I would get mad at myself. Like, Dwayne, you're not a gossip. You're not negative. You're not, please don't share little details with him. Something that just I found maybe sort of an irritant in the day. He would blow out of proportion. Then all of a sudden, you shouldn't like that person and they're out to get you. And it was just a weird mindset. So anyways, that sort of went on, and we dated actually for 4 years before we got married. So there was plenty of time for me to change my mind. At that time, people were just starting to move in together before they got married, and we decided we would do that. Another red flag is when I met his family, it was crazy. Like, it's weird because my body will have like a physical reaction to people. Like, it's like I have this sixth sense, like, stay away from them, be afraid of him, don't tell. And I actually get like a shaking, trembling feeling in I didn't know back then that was called anxiety, which is what I know now. But, and I definitely had that meeting his dad. His dad was, I would say, a malignant narcissist. Like, I knew there was a lot of abuse in the family, but it was really weird. Like, when you would sit around at family gatherings, there was 4 siblings in that family. Everybody, even to this day, pretends like he's this wonderful person. And I look around the circle and I think, wow, like, he physically abused my ex, and the mother is a true enabler. So he physically abused my ex. He got it divorced, and he would literally beat him in the garage and say things to him like, don't tell your mother. He did the same thing to his brother, but not so much. But the 2 sisters, he really emotionally and verbally abused them, like, constantly. These girls, like, are 90 pounds. And to this day, he'll call them fat. It just kills me. And he's like 400 pounds. So that used to anger me a lot. And so I never fit in with that family, and they made it known that I never fit in. Like, it was always uncomfortable. I, would go, and I've broken this habit as well, I would go out of my way for people. I just wanted to be liked. I just wanted to be accepted. I don't do that anymore. It's just a complete waste of time. If people don't like you for who you are, and then that was a hard lesson to learn. And I would bend over backwards for this family, and it was just always, they were just so rude. So, and it was weird because...
Oh, sorry, continue.
I was just going to say it was weird because at the beginning of our relationship, my ex totally had my back when it came to that, like, stood up for me every time. He would fight with his dad, like, don't you speak to her that way. But I noticed once we were married, that's when things really changed, is once we got married. I noticed he no longer did that. He actually enjoyed, it was really bizarre to me.
So for 1 second, let's just kind of back up a little and give a little bit of maybe a picture of your life at this time. So it's 4 years later. So you're around 22 or 23 years old when you got married?
I was 23.
23. Yep. And you are living in a small town?
Living in a small town, just a small apartment. We lived together for not quite a year before we married.
Yeah, and the expectations of what you're supposed to do in life, like when you're supposed to get married, all your friends are getting married, in smaller towns.
Yeah.
Being general here, but for the most part, people get married younger than they would in a bigger city. And the idea of what kind of you're supposed to do is, you get married, you take care of kids, more in a small town than in the city. But
right.
Especially back then, or at least even still like 2000, we're still dealing with this kind of mentality. So you're kind of going in there, and what else, besides that belief system, what else is, I guess, running you as far as mirroring, we know about the love bombing that has occurred. But as far as like what you like about him, what would you say is the biggest thing?
Honestly, the biggest thing, looking back, was I really thought he was in my corner.
Okay.
I really thought this is the one person that I've met in my whole life that honestly wants what's best for me, and he's truly in my corner, because he told me that all the time. And of course I fell for it.
And for those 4 years, was he generally on, before you got married, was he generally on decent behavior, or when did did devaluation occur before marriage? Or
no.
Okay, so
not till halfway through the marriage.
Okay, so things so in a certain way, I'm getting ahead of myself, and I apologize, and I also apologize to if I insulted any woman already during this. I didn't mean to, but I guess how I'm getting at is he eventually morphed into his dad unconsciously.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And my children and I discuss that all the time. I really didn't see him as his father at that point, even though my brother warned me. I had so many red flags. I'm a seamstress. I could have sewn a dress, honestly. So many red flags. But at the time, I didn't even know what a red flag was. Like, my parents just didn't. I felt like my parents weren't my biggest fans, so I didn't understand any of that. Like, it's really been a growing process for me over these years. One thing I was going to say was when you talked about being in a small town and the expectations, it was funny because when I first decided I think I'm going to leave him, I put myself in therapy to help me make that decision. And the therapist said to me, "Tell me why you got married." And I looked at her and I said, "I have no idea. I wasn't head over heels." I said, "Really? Everybody else was getting married. We were the last in my friend group to get married, and that was the expectation. You got married and you started a family." And we had and I was a stay-at-home mom. We had a lot of stay-at-home moms in our area. So I thought, oh, well, I guess I'll just get on with it. It's sad to say, but it's the truth. And I felt like, I kept convincing myself, like, he's good for me. He's always there for me. He's in my corner. And so, anyways, life just progressed. And when I talk about red flags, his family would also sort of browbeat me in a subtle way, like, you would be nothing without him. You're so lucky to have him. Look how he treats you. Isn't he wonderful? He loves you so much. So it was always, I guess, that constant gaslighting when I look back throughout the whole marriage. So we got married, and I remember we had lived together for almost a year, and the only thing I picked up on was he decided he was going to quit his job and start his own business, and I said, we don't have the income for this. But he did anyways, and in the meantime, he had purchased this vehicle that he couldn't afford, and it got repossessed. And that was a huge red flag, definitely, but I didn't see it. I just thought, poor so-and-so, he just made a mistake. But he was terrible with money from the beginning, and he's even worse with money now. Like, that never got better. That was a big bone of contention throughout the whole marriage. I've always been good with money, like, not good at, I can invest, but I know how to budget, and I know where I can put my money and how to spend it, and that was always huge fights between us. So we got married, and we moved into our first house. It was actually a farmhouse we rented from someone in my family, and we got a first dog together, and he abused that dog, and that scared me. So I thought, what am I doing? I'm in for something. The dog sort of snarled at me, but I was afraid of the dog because I got bit by a German Shepherd when I was younger, and it was a German Shepherd, and like, why he would bring a German Shepherd home, I have no idea. But so I was nervous, and I think the dog probably sensed that, and he got up off the sofa and walked over and literally slammed that dog in the side of the head. And I thought, wow, and I found on very quickly once I got married that you don't question him. he does what he wants. And if you dare question him, you're stupid. And he just, I always say, I use the term barks you down. Like, he was really good at yelling. And again, I wasn't really used to that. Like,
so the transition of the dating version of him and the married version of him, when this erupted for the first time, when you were used to some other way completely before, were you at a loss? Were you wondering who this person was? Like, what was going on with you at that, like, during those moments?
I remember just fear. And I think that it was like fear of what is going to be in store for me. And at the same time, it was a weird condition too. Like, it shocked me, but I don't know why I was already conditioned, because there was no violence in my home growing up. Like, there's a lot of mind games and emotional manipulation, but definitely no physical, even between my parents. So I'm not sure even why I accepted that from the get-go. I do remember being a newlywed and thinking, I don't think it's a good idea, and looking for apartments, but I didn't have the guts to do it. I didn't have the guts to go to my parents and say, look, I made a mistake.
So you were afraid of being judged?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
My mom was very judgmental. Mm-hmm. And, of course, they didn't like him from the get-go. Like, they never liked him.
And the last thing you probably wanted to get into was walking back and then
so.
getting an "I told you so."
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I knew they disliked him, but I thought once we got married and stuff, they sort of warmed up to him. But that wasn't the case. But so here I am. I'm a newlywed in this house. I have a little job at a local store or whatever, and all of a sudden we start getting phone calls and from bill collectors. And again, I've never dealt with that. I've always paid my bills on time. My parents always paid their bills on time. And that blew me away. I was just like, who are you? And come to find out that he owed, like, then it seemed insurmountable, but it was probably maybe $5,000 or $6,000. And when I questioned him, he was he felt so bad. He's like, I know, I kept saying to myself, I can't marry. And it's weird how he used the term someone. Looking back, it's weird how that stuck in my head. I'm like, oh, well, that's not my name. But I knew I couldn't marry someone like this. Like, I should have cleaned my stuff up first. But yet he did. He did marry me like that. And he never once mentioned it. And so it was really embarrassing for me because right then I started hiding stuff from anyone who knew me. I just became very secretive to my friends and my family, and I didn't share anything. Like, my mom and dad would pop in and the phone would ring, like 6 or 7 at night, and be a bill collector, and I'd have to lie. And so that's why, I do remember not being happy and thinking I was going to leave, and then I got pregnant with my first child. So we decided we wanted to buy our first home, and we moved into his parents' home to save money for a down payment. And that, when my eyes got even more opened, because I had to work afternoons and their phone would be ringing and I'd pick up the phone and guess what? Bell wants money, Hydro wants money, they're behind in their car payments. And I just thought, oh my God, this is where he got it from. But he never told me any of this stuff. Like, looking back, I realized I didn't know the person I married because he's never, ever shared anything with me. Very, very secretive. But that was normal life for them. And when I questioned him on it, he said, oh, yeah, well, I learned how to handle money from my mom and dad. They thought giving someone a check when they knew there was no money in the account was a way to pay a bill. And I thought, wow. So that was sort of weird. And I did notice his parents drank a lot. And I was not a drinker at that. They would always offer me a drink, and I just had no desire to drink, really. And so we saved our money and moved into our first home, and it was definitely not extravagant. He decided that I should be a stay-at-home mom, and all his reasons really made sense to me at the time. Like, daycare is so expensive, we can't afford 2 gas, and we'd have to buy you a decent car. But it was all about him. I have my job, and I make so much more money than you. And like, looking back, I see those signs, but at the time I thought he was reflecting and suggesting what was best for our family. I remember realizing at this point, like, okay, he's just not good with money. So we were trying to live on one income, and I had to literally hide his bank card because he would take money out for lunch, and he used to work downtown Toronto. So sometimes when you're parking, he was a tradesman. So, parking, it could be anywhere from $25 to $40 a day. And he would always, instead of like, okay, I can park in this lot for $10 or can park right out front for $30, he would always park out front. Like he would never consider our budget or how much money we had to spend. And so I remember one time he had come in the house and he had like bags from Canadian Tire, and I said, like, what did you buy? And he thought, well, you want me to, whatever, I wanted to do something in the house. I studied interior design at college, so I was a real renovator. You want me to do this, so I had to buy these tools to do this job. And I thought, really? Like, I don't have a vacuum. So I went to get groceries, and of course, he had drained the account. Then he put on his cape. I always call it putting on his cape when he wants to show everyone how wonderful he is. He went into town, returned all his tools that he shouldn't have bought in the first place. And then when he came back, I was expected to be, overjoyed. And aren't you just a great guy? Because, you returned your tools to feed our family. And even though I recognized what was going on at that time, I really felt I was in over my head already. Like there was nothing I could do about it. And looking back, I know that just wasn't the case, but for some reason, that I just thought that. Like, so we
just for 1 second for people that heard the name before, Canadian Tire. Just so everyone knows what Canadian Tire is, it is a not like the Home Depot, but it's like it's got everything. It's not like Walmart. It's a cross between, let's say, a Walmart and a Home Depot. Would you say that at best?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I would say that.
Okay.
I love Canadian Tire. It's one of my favorite stores.
And once you buy something, they give you Canadian Tire money as a perk, which is its own little thing, which you can spend back there. It's a real Canadian thing to do.
Yes. Go on to your next purchase.
Yes.
Yeah, so that happened, and I thought, well, that's really bizarre. And I also realized at that point he needed constant appreciation and praise. So I realized that, and we moved on to buy a bigger home because I found out I was pregnant with baby number 2. And when shortly after we got that home, he quit his job. And I thought, wow, like I know you just, did that so we'd be approved for this mortgage. But he just left us high and dry. And those moments would always like complete panic mode inside. And that's when I realized my anxiety would start to build. And it was just a constant state of chaos, really, my whole marriage with him that he created. And when I would say, why would you quit your job? Well, they're assholes and they don't appreciate me and they're this and they're that. And I'm thinking, geez, the whole company can't be that. Like, they're not small companies they work for. But he would always manage to get a job within less than a month, always. And I thought, well, he must have a good reputation out there, is what I thought. Now, my son is in the trades, and he said, that's not really the case, Mom. Like, there's just so much work out there for tradesmen. But that was my take on it. I thought, well, maybe what he's saying is true because, he does have all these job offers. And so at that time, I had an opportunity to open up a decorating store with someone, and I knew I couldn't afford it on my own, so I took on a partner. I just really, really wanted to do it. Like I said, that's what I did at school, and he would always downplay, interior design is stupid. You live out here. I wish people would choose something to go to school for that actually made money. Like, he was always putting it down, but yet he really enjoyed it when we sold our house for, more money than what we paid for it because I had fixed it all up. And so he'd reap the rewards, but he really wasn't supportive at any time during any job I ever had. And I'm looking back, I know it was because that was just his control. Like, he never wanted me to have money or to be self-sufficient or on my own. Plus, he'd probably have to do more at the house, which he just refused to do at this point. He was just useless when it came to anything to do with the house.
So a big part of the abuse that was occurring up to this point is all about keeping you in a position where you have to be the one asking for money, or just below him in that way. Like financial control is a big part up until this point for the story.
Yes, financial abuse was definitely prevalent through our whole marriage, but it was done in such a subtle, like a weird way. Like he would deposit his check, and I would then take that money and pay the bills. And I had full access to money that I wanted, but the problem was there was never any money left over because he ran up debt in the oddest ways. Like, we have to get a sticker for our vehicles here in Ontario, and he wouldn't get a sticker. And then he would get a fine for not having a sticker, and then he wouldn't pay that fine. So then they would yank his license. So an $80 sticker at that time would end up being like $5.60. It was constant weird debt like that, like not filing his income tax. I would have to literally, so every time a monumental thing like this comes in your life, like, don't normal people just go out and renew their license and get their stickers and file their income taxes? No, not him. Nothing he could do. He was incapable and still is of doing anything normal, which blows my mind to this day. I don't understand that. Like, he really does think, I realized very late in our marriage, that he really does believe he is above the law. Those rules don't apply to him. He doesn't have to do that. And most of the time, sometimes he would get away with it. But so I saw weird debt like that coming in, and the fact that remember when I talked about the first night I met him and how they took him to small claims, a judgment that they won, by the way, and his wage got garnished at that time. That was a constant throughout our marriage, too. He would always try to do these side jobs and look at me, I'm making more money, and I'm bringing this in for the family, and you should appreciate me. But say out of 10 jobs, 8 of them weren't done properly. And people would come back. Like, I remember at one job, they came back, and can I say what he did for a living?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So he was in commercial sheet metal, and so his side jobs would include installing a furnace or an air conditioner. So he installed a furnace for somebody, and he didn't do it properly, and they had blowbacks throughout their whole house. So it's like a fine ash. It was a wood-burning furnace. It was a fine ash that went through their whole house that they had to claim through insurance. Well, of course, insurance wants to know the particulars, and they sent out, I remember TSSA coming to our home, which is like the Technical Safety and Standards Act for, I'm not sure if it's just Ontario or Canada. And I sat there while they interviewed him, and he lied. He lied about everything. And, of course, if he got a fine, he didn't tell me. He might have done a side job to pay that fine. But it wasn't until a year ago that my one son said to me, you do know that Dad did lose X license because of that. And I said, no. He didn't even tell me that. I had no idea. He continued to do jobs. But see, this son is his favorite. So he shares certain things with him. I don't know why he decided to share that with him, but.
So in a way, your husband is like the work that he does. He's a building, but he's a very imposing looking building, and from the outside it's like, oh, that's a nicely built building, but the little parts inside weren't done correctly, and that building is really just should be condemned in a sort of way.
Oh my God, I'm killing myself laughing right now, because when I get to the end of my story about us trying to sell the house, you're going to see how prevalent that is, like, really. So that was becoming a main thing in our marriage. So basically, I was on eggshells all the time, because that was such a worry for me. Like, I'm just the type of person, like, when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And he's just not that type. Like, he just had no follow through and so dishonest to people. Like, I noticed his lying was huge, but they were little white lies at that time. Like, for example, if we were at dinner with someone and they relayed a story, he would tell that story to someone else, and I would think, that's not what happened. And at this time, my mom and dad were still in the picture. They would come out and visit us, and they'd help with the kids as much as they can. My mom babysat for me, so she lived 15 minutes from me at that time, so I would drive out, drop my kids off, drive back into my store, work all day, drive back out, get them, drive back. And yet he walked around like, he would always say to me, our store, it's our store. But he had no part in it. I handled all the money. We never had to put any personal money into that business. So that always sort of bothered me. I sort of let that go. I thought, geez, you can't even pick the kids up for me. But it's just something, again, like when my friends comment on how strong I am, I realize that strength started to build then, because I realized I'm in this on my own. And, you know, he would say things to me subtly, constantly, like, well, if the kids are sick, you're the one who has to take the day off, because why would I take a day off my high-paying job? I make way more money than you. Like, little comments like that he would just suddenly make. And then when I called him on it, he would say he didn't say that. So there was starting with this, like, roundabout conflict resolution. There was never a resolution because he just talked in circles to me all the time. And then it would always end with, if I had too many valid points or proof, the yelling began. This is when the yelling really got out of control. Like, he would, a bully, not so much physical, more like a bullyish mentality. Like, if I got frustrated and, say, tried to leave the room just to cool down, he would stand in my way and not let me leave. Or if I wasn't doing what he liked at that point in the argument, he would walk right up to me and, like, be an inch away from my face and just yell, yell, yell. And so that was knocking me down even further, because then I was starting to realize, like, I couldn't even have an opinion. It wasn't, you know, his word was the final word, and that's it. And he also started at this time to impress upon me, like, you know, we discussed how everything's done. My son likes to say how he does everything half-assed. He was his home renovator, but he refused to let anybody come in the home to fix anything. I would just have to make do. So, say my fridge broke down, too bad. You're not calling a repairman. I will look after it. And he would say, don't you call anyone. And I would listen. Like, that's what kills me. I'm just such a different person now than I was. Why would I listen? I have no idea. Like, you know, and I know if I had called my mom or my dad and said, look, like, my fridge isn't working, I know they would have helped me. Like, we definitely had our issues, but I know they would have helped me with stuff like that, or my brother. But yet I didn't. And so, again, when I look back, this is why a lot of people were so surprised when I left, because I kept all of this inside. I shared it with nobody. I felt like it was my problem. Like I said, you just get on with it. There's no point in whining about it. I sort of made this mess, and I'm going to have to deal with it.
As far as feeling like you had no way out, or where you were during this time, you know, you're not saying anything to anyone, is the belief that, like, you have to be still, like, divorce is not an option at this point. Like, are you thinking that maybe everything he says is true about you, and you know, your self-esteem is gone? Because you know, you're to get to the point where, you know, you've given up, and his constant need for control has worn you down to the point where he now has it fully, in a sense, that you are, you know, do you get to a point where can't get out of bed in some ways?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, I am so not that type of person. Like, I was very independent, very positive, but yeah, I do remember just, like, throwing in the towel. It was the weirdest thing. And from that day on, it just went downhill, because then I started to see him in a different light. And I think, you know, maybe that's when the devaluing stage sort of came in lightly. It wasn't heavy, but I would pick up on things like, for example, one time I had no heat in my car, and it was the dead of winter, and, I'll fix it. Of course, he only made good with promises to other people too. Like, he would go to the neighbor's house and fix their car, but he would never fix my car. Like, I drive his children around. Like, he was always putting on that cape. His main goal was to make everybody else see how wonderful he was. And he's done a good job of that in some ways, but he never fooled anyone who was really close with me. He never fooled them. But even my kids would comment on that. Like, he won't pick me up from dance, but he'll drive out of his way to bring, you know, the neighbor home. And, you know, it was just obvious. And so that was all going on as well. But so I remember calling him and saying, you know, like, I have an appointment in town, so I'm a seamstress, and sometimes they would come to me or I would go to them, and I said, I have an appointment, and I can't see out of my windows because my heat isn't working. And oh, well, he was doing a job with his friend, and he said, well, I'll meet you, and I'll come over right now. And so he came home. He's only like 10 minutes from the house. But his friend made the oddest comment. He said, I told my ex that if my wife called me, I would just tell her to go to hell. And I thought, that's an interesting comment. I thought, it's because of him I'm in this mess. He was supposed to fix this weeks ago. I've been driving around, wiping my windows down. I finally get mad and put him on the spot. The only reason I came home probably is because his friend was there, and see, it gave him the opportunity to look like, he was saving everything. It made him appear to his friend like, look what I do for her. Aren't I the best husband? So when I look back, so that was maybe 10 years ago, I realized the devaluation stage had started because he was sort of bad-mouthing me to some people. And before that, like, I honestly thought that this man still was 100% in my corner. Like, he might be a lot of things, but he's always there when I need him. But that wasn't really the case. Like, when I look back, I see my marriage as it was always in stages, and it was always about him. I just have to get through this stage. I just have to be able to do this, and then we'll be clear, we'll be over, we can start fresh, But the problem is the stages never stopped. They just kept coming and coming. So instead of like the physical and bullying attitude, it was more about lying and secretive. And looking back, it makes me crazy because I think, I thought he had learned his lesson, he had changed, but he actually just switched up his tactics. He just thought, well, if she's going to call the cops, then I won't do that anymore, but I'll do this. And like now I see things that he does, like while we've been separated, I see things he does. If I do something that he doesn't like, he punishes me in some way, but I don't care. I don't take it as punishment anymore. I sort of laugh at the stuff. But so life sort of went on, and his family and I still aren't really clicking. Nothing's changed there. Plus, I've lost my family, but just my mom and dad, and I'm still close with one brother and a couple of cousins I was still close with.
So what do you mean by you lost? Sorry, what do you mean by you lost your family?
We just had zero contact, contact whatsoever.
Okay.
So, because my mom is a bit of a controlling person too, so because she wasn't getting her way and she was frustrated, she just stopped talking to me, and I just said fine, because I was so stressed at that point. Like, that's around the time I kept getting strep throat. I just thought, fine, like, go. But she didn't know actually what I was living with, because I didn't tell anyone. I always would keep it to myself, and I never shared stuff with my kids. Now I know that they know things that went on, but and I realized looking back now, I thought, I'm going to get on with my life. They've always never been supportive with me or kind, and I'm just going to get on with my life, and this is going to be better for me. But looking back, he zeroed right in on me. Like, this is the time that I can, get her in my grasp, my clutches. She has nobody else. Like, I totally see that now, but I didn't at the time. I thought he was being super supportive. I thought he was in my corner again. But he had an agenda, and that agenda was to totally isolate and separate me from anyone. So I noticed something when we went to his mom and dad's, and they were quite happy, too, to have my mom and dad out of the picture. We went to his family, and all of a sudden they were a bit nicer to me. And over, within the next year or two, we started to get along better. And now I look back and I see it, because they're controlling, too. And it was just the whole dynamic was just so weird. And so I should say, the money situation is still happening. We never seem to have any money. And that's something that the kids bring up to me now. They said, you never had money, even though still accuse me of spending it all. They said they remember me filling the ketchup bottle up with water to make it go further. But I think when I look back and I see his mindset, it was his job to constantly keep us broke so I couldn't go anywhere. He would subtly threaten me the odd time and say things like, if we ever split up, I won't be the one leaving this house. It was my parents' home. If it wasn't for me, we wouldn't have had this house. Yes, we had to pay for it, but still, I'm thinking, man, you're nervy. But those little subtle put-downs and insults, they stick with you, and they register in your mind. Even though legally, that's not how it would happen. But I was afraid of him, really. And I was afraid that he would poison my kids against me, which he has tried. He didn't succeed, but so every gut instinct about him at that started to come in, and they've all been 100% true. So it's like I'm just waking up and starting to realize who this person is. So the less control and stuff he can pull over my eyes, the angrier he gets and does more stuff behind my back. But I didn't realize it at that time. I thought he was mellowing in his older age, and he was learning lessons and trying to become a good dad and a good spouse, which isn't the case at all. But so anyways, we were camping. He'd, of course, been complaining about his job. You know, they're assholes. They don't appreciate it. I thought, oh, my God, here we go again. But that went on for a good 2 years. And I thought, he's just going to bitch about it. Because he did have it really good there, like wage-wise. And his credit was on track. It wasn't awesome, but it was good credit. And I thought, okay, things are finally turning around for us. This is great. And we were camping, and I heard him on the phone, and he would disappear and try not to let him hear his phone calls. And he was on the phone all the time. And I come to realize, and he just said, I quit my job. He just quit his job. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I've suffered with you all these years through all these financial up and downs. We're finally getting on track, and you just quit your job again? Well, they're assholes, and they don't appreciate it. I thought, oh, my God, I can't take this anymore. It's like, I said, what's your plan now? My plan is to go out on my own. I said, no. I flat out said, absolutely not. You're terrible with paperwork. We both know that you're awful with money. I said, no, I do not want you to do that. And he just looked at me and said, too bad. And he had been chatting with his friend about it. Well, thinks that I should do this. And because, you know, of course his friend thinks he's wonderful because he's told him he is. So I thought, this is not going to end well. And so that was about almost 8 to 10 years ago. And I really took, like, not only did I take those rose-colored glasses off, I stomped them and threw them in the garbage. Like, I thought, you need to wake up here. This is, like, I started to see patterns. I'd always made excuses for him. And, you know, he's crazy. Like, he's so self-absorbed, and he's so selfish. He never once thinks of the kids. Like, hey, I could do this to my family. He never, and at that time I realized how unappreciative he was. He had a loyal spouse. He had good kids. He had a beautiful home. He could care less. He just cluttered it up with junk and hoarded stuff, didn't care what anyone else thought. Like, he really didn't care what we thought of him. And so I was realizing all of that at this time too. So he went out on his own, and that was terrible, terrible time for me because every week, so what he would do is write a check back, and we would deposit that check as our income. So every week I'd be on eggshells because some weeks that check couldn't come. I'd have to wait for him to write it. And he's just not good at the financial end of it. Like, he's so self-absorbed. His whole demeanor is, who can I impress this week? And he gets so absorbed in that. And also I noticed he needs to constantly put out fires. Like, oh, I talked about this person to that person, and now I have to go around and fix all these little fires. So he's so self-absorbed in his drama on a daily basis, he totally doesn't think of anybody else. And so I said, what about it? Because we have benefits too. And my son had just gotten braces. I said, what about our benefits? Oh, no. We still have those. I'm paying into those separately and blah, blah, blah. He wasn't. The orthodontist called me, the secretary, and said, your check bounced. And I said, what check? Like, well, your insurance didn't go through, so your spouse came in and left us a check. I'm saying, because he bounces checks all the time. He doesn't, like I said, and we all both know he's not good with money. So I was really crying on the phone. I was so embarrassed and so defeated. I thought, he lied to me about not having benefits. Like, our son just got braces. And, like, here, braces are, like, I had to lock in, I had to, like, guarantee I'd pay for them on the phone. And I can't remember how much it was. Like, every other month I had to pay $700 or something like that for 2 years. So in the meantime, the dentist that sent us to the orthodontist, their bill didn't go through because I had all the kids there. I assumed we had benefits. We didn't have benefits, and that was $4,000 that went to collections because we never had that money to pay because we barely had money because we had just started this stupid business. He breadcrumbed me, I guess, like future faking, like, oh, don't worry, I'm going to put your name on the business, and then you can write checks, and you can do all the books, and never happened. And I know he purposely did that just to keep me out of the loop. We would go, so the first year goes by, not a lick of paperwork in sight, and no income tax filed. I should mention, like, when he started the business, we had just paid off the last line of credit, that was actually a joint effort. Our trailer was on there. That wasn't him running up the bill, but we did build that into our mortgage. And he was right back at me wanting to use that line of credit. And I was like, we just paid that line of credit off. But, he started this business, and, nobody can just start a business with no income, and, I'm going to have to let him use it. Or like, what are my chances here? What do I do? Because if I leave him now, I have zero spousal and child support because he basically doesn't have a job. Like, to see how he stuck, like, I'm thinking he did this on purpose. He stuck me here. He knows the consequences. So again, here I am feeling like I'm locked down again. I'm in this box, and it was just so frustrating. And I didn't see it then, but I did. When I look back now, I realize how depressed I was, how it settled in. But so, of course, he got to use that line of credit. Of course, we couldn't pay it. So I took a retail job. The kids were older at this time, and the oldest could watch the youngest. And I took a retail job that summer just to pay that line of credit, because you don't make a lot of money at retail. But it was enough. I just had my paychecks literally went to that line of credit. So I realized then I'm constantly paying his bills too. Whatever he runs up, I'm stuck with. It's either comes out of my mouth or the kid's mouth, or, I have to like do this work to get it paid, because he just doesn't think of it, and that's why he has bad credit. So at that time, I caught him in a conversation with one of our friends bad-mouthing my job. Her job is stupid, and she wastes all this time driving. She barely makes anything. And I thought, wow, I'm paying your line of credit for your business that you shouldn't have even started. But again, I said nothing to any of my friends. I look back and I think, man, I was a vault. Like, I didn't say anything. And I think that came from embarrassment. Like, I was so embarrassed I got myself into this mess. And I just didn't want to tell people, how broke we were. So anyways, that goes on. So the first year goes by. And the first year goes by, of course, no income tax, no paperwork in sight. And I started to feel sick to my stomach. I started to feel antsy. Year 2 goes on, same nonsense. I have to rely on him for, at that time it was total financial abuse, because I had to rely on whatever he was going to give me. And I just crossed my fingers and hoped the mortgage would get paid. And I always used, because I could never have any savings, I always used our mortgage payment as sort of a little savings account. So, because he never paid attention to money. Like, I could have easily started my own savings account, but there was just never any money. He would never look at the bank account or could be bothered with it. But so if we re-signed our mortgage and they said your payment's $1,200 a month, I would up it to say $1,500 and try, because I really, my goal, one of my dreams was to be mortgage free one day. And so I had it all planned out. So when he turned 55, we would be mortgage free. And I thought I was pretty smart. I really did. I look back and think we were naive. I really thought I was pretty smart that I was pulling this off. It was my only savings. And I wouldn't let him touch it. Like, I wouldn't remortgage to buy a new car. I just refused to sign papers. So anyways, the second year goes by, still no income tax filed. So come to find out, I noticed he was constantly getting the mail. Because remember, I work from home. There he is, getting the mail again. This went on for probably a month or two. He would constantly get that mail. One day he was gone. I went out and got the mail because I knew he was hiding something. And I found the CRA bill. It just happened to be in the mail that day. And I went inside and I thought, this is what he's been hiding. And I open up, so CRA is income tax that people, the government, that you have to pay. His bill was $126,000. And I honestly thought I was going to have a nervous breakdown. I couldn't believe it. Like, I just thought, wow, I think I was, at that point, I was so low and so devastated. I think that's why during the separation, I'm so cool now, because I already went through all these emotions. So this was 5 years ago. And I just thought, I can't believe that he can keep a secret as big as this. Not once did he mention, and when I tried to broach the subject, remember, he would just bark me down and we'd end up in a yelling match. But not once did he say, I'm worried. This is getting huge. Not once. He just let on like everything was hunky-dory. And that really showed me his true character, because I don't understand how someone can keep a secret that big from their spouse. I own half of this property too, and I thought, you've put everything at jeopardy here. Like, because they will come for that money. And you won't have a choice, and you have no job right now. So guess what they're coming for? They're going to come for our house. They're not going to come for. So he comes home, and I'm shaking and trembling, and I'm so angry. And I go out to the garage, and he's there fixing his projects that never get fixed or completed. And I have this piece of paper in my hand, and I say to him, "What is this?" He just looks at me and shrugs his shoulders. And that's when I saw the stare, the narc stare that we all talk about, that dead look in their eyes, that they look at you as if, they just can't even be bothered with you. And I thought, oh my God. And I asked him again, "What is this?" You know what? That's not mine. I said, "Your name is on it. It's a government document. It's absolutely yours." He still tried to say it wasn't his. This went back and forth for 5 or 10 minutes, and I just thought, F you, like, I'm not giving up. And I said, "Look at this number." Yeah, and then so he finally admitted it was his, and then his next line of defense was, "Well, I don't owe that much." And I said, "Well, it doesn't matter if you owe this much. This is what our government says you owe, and they will take it. And then it'll be up to you to prove otherwise. This is the number they're looking for." And I could not convince him of that. Nope, I was stupid, I was silly, I was being emotional. And he went to hug me. And I just backed right off, and I said, "Don't you ever touch me." And he just went, "Oh, whatever." And I walked in the house, and I was like beside myself. I thought everything came crashing down. It makes me emotional to still think of it. I think everything that was building, and I realized I never knew this man. Because to keep a secret, and I realized then, this is financial abuse. He has got us in a predicament that we're going to have to get out of. And of course, my leaving plans are on the side burner again, because now I might not even have a house to go with me. So it was not pleasant for probably a month or two. Christmas is coming. I am so stressed out. I have no idea how we're going to pay this bill. And the government will give you so much time. I do find, because he's not filed income tax a lot over the years, and his wages haven't garnished, but I find that they do give you a lot of time. It could be, 2 or 3 years past the date when they'll finally just do something about it. I'm not going to say, of course I knew it was coming, because I knew he had filed income tax. But I think it just really, I couldn't believe this man who I thought, all these years at least had my back and was in my corner, could do this to me and my family. Not even a consideration to his children. And that's when I really saw who he was. 199%. And that's when devaluing went into full force. So I find the income tax bill, we're not speaking. I can't even bother to speak to him. And I'm just trying, try to be happy for my kids. They're older at this time. They're all living in the house, but they are older. They knew something was up, but I also would never say, "Your dad did this." I never said stuff like that. Like I said, I was a vault. I didn't tell anybody. Now, when this income tax thing came around, I confided in my one friend at dance. We had been friends at that time for 9 or 10 years, because I thought I was going to have a nervous breakdown. And so she has been by my side since then. I have been completely honest with her about most things since then. And so she's been a great support system for me. And my brother, I confided in my brother, and he told me then to leave. And he said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to leave." He said, "Go with your gut instinct." And he said he would help me. What happened was Christmas was coming, and his family decided that they were going to switch up Christmas, and his older sister was going to have it. And 2 of my kids pulled rank and said, "We're not going." And I said, "What? We're not going." I said, "You don't want to go just for your dad?" And so then my other child joined in the conversation, and they told me things like, "We've never liked them. We're not wanted there. We're beneath them. They don't even like us. They give all the other favorites presents." And I was blown away. I wasn't blown away that they thought these things. I was blown away because I thought I'd hit it all these years. And I was like, wow, I thought I just felt like that. I tried to hide this from you guys. And so my daughter was 16. So 16, 19, and 21, I think my kids were. And they just said, "Yeah, we're not going." And so my daughter was extremely adamant about it. I refuse to go. I'm not going. And so it comes out that the reason why she wasn't going is because she was sexually abused about his by her cousin. And as soon as she told me, I knew it was true because this one boy was completely different. There was rumors in a small town, but see, nobody told me because I was family, but there was rumors how he had, hurt this set of twins on the other side of his family, and he was charged. But over the years, to hear my spouse's family talk about it, and they were on a vendetta. They only laid charges because they're jealous of us, and it was just this whole thing. Every time you went to see them, the problem was I thought I had protected my child. I wasn't being naive to the situation, but the problem was I think she was the first victim. She was extremely young, and I wasn't looking for it at that time. So this was when I knew I was leaving my husband because I watched his whole family just up and lie about it. So the boy's mother is the golden child on that side of the family. And they can do no wrong. Doesn't matter. Apparently, it doesn't even matter if you molest other people's kids. They're never held accountable for anything. And when that happened and they just turned on the silent treatment, they wouldn't even communicate. And my spouse handled it by turning on the silent treatment. I thought, oh my God, I'm in the twilight zone again. And I just looked around. I thought, what I'm dealing with here is a whole family of narcs. Like I saw it clear as day then. And from that day forward, that child and my ex have zero relationship because she sees him exactly for who he is. And then she spent her time trying to convince me of that. So I'll go back to the whole tax thing. So when that happened, and I again went and confided in my brother, he was furious. He said, I don't even know what to tell you. He never liked my ex's family either, but he never told me that until I went to talk to him. All these people were protecting me, like they didn't want to come forward, and I see why, because they said, you're too much with him. Like I don't know if you would have believed me, and I think that's true. So, but I said at the time I didn't know my one child felt so negatively towards my spouse. I thought I couldn't leave. Because then not only has that happened, but now I'm going to tear the family apart, and I have to, get her therapy. I've got to get her focused. I can't think about myself at this time. I have to try to keep the family unit together and try to keep the conflict low. And that was my train of thought. And my friend helped me all through that and process it and stuff. And she sort of agreed with me, like, your child right now has to be the focus of everything. The income tax, so back to my spouse waiting on his job, he finally did get his job, and his next concern was to bully me into remortgaging our house. We ended up remortgaging an extra, I think, $120,000. And I was just I think I was so broken. I had to meet him there. I wouldn't even drive with him. I said, I'll just meet you there. I bawled all the way home. I cried because I knew this was going to be a turning point in my life. I knew I had to face who he was, and I realized that poor spouse, this wasn't a mistake, this was intentional. And everything he dragged us all down with him, and he did intentionally by, avoidance and building himself up in this inflated ego of his. It was just out of control. Again, no consideration to his children who were living in the home at the time. He knows that my daughter wants to go to university one day. We had no savings for that. I was going to actually, use a line of credit against my house at that time because my house would almost be mortgage free. That was my plan to get her through university. Because despite all the stuff she's been through, she is extremely smart. And she's very dedicated. And I just thought, wow, like you are so selfish. Even the trauma that our daughter suffered, you don't care. It's always about you. Like, he had no plans for her to go to university at all. So fast forward. Because he worked for a school board, he had an in to get me a job as a custodian. And it's not a very, prestigious job. But actually in Ontario, We actually make pretty good money, and we have benefits plan package and pension. So I had an interview, and I got the job, and that's what paid our house bills. Plus, I was only 4 hours when I first started, so I still had my sewing income. And I would get up. I got a really good contract that year. It was a $25,000 contract. I would get up at 3 a.m., have a, like Mimi, lays around for an hour, go down to my sewing room. I would work until 1:30 p.m., come up and get changed, go to work until 8 o'clock. Come home, and the odd time I'd have to have a fitting or something at night as well. Every time I came home, he was sitting on the couch. I thought, wow, I am literally working myself to death here. And I did that for 3 years. 3 years his wage was garnished. 3 years. And he did nothing at that time. He did no side jobs. He didn't even try to pay that tax down. I forced him to sell. He had bought this stupid car when he owned his own business, and I forced him to sell that car just to pay some of his Visa off because I refused to pay it anymore. Because he was using his Visa to buy gas and lunch because he didn't want me to notice how little money there was actually in the bank account. So now he's running up his Visa. So I just flat out said, you continue to do that, I'm not paying it. Because in the meantime, I talked to my cousin. I started to branch out more and start sharing things more. And I spoke with my cousin, and she was completely shocked because I was always close with her, and I never told her anything. And her advice to me was, you're going to go and you're going to buy yourself a vehicle, because he had always had us in these shitty vehicles. So she said, you have a job now, and you have to have something reliable. So she said, and I want you to get a credit card for your business. And that's going to be, you're going to establish your own credit, and that's going to be a start for you. So I took her advice, and I did that. Thank goodness, because that's how I was able to leave him. So I worked at that job. So that went on for 3 years, and that just ended this spring. So April, before COVID hit, his garnishment was lifted. And within, I'm not even kidding, within a week, he was completely back to his narcissistic, verbally abusive self. And during those 3 years, he was, because I was so ignorant to him, I know now it's called reactive abuse, because I would fly off the handle and send him these nasty text messages, and I thought, control yourself. Like, what is wrong with you? But I realized I was at my breaking point, and I couldn't take anymore. And it really angered me how he had no remorse and no empathy for the situation whatsoever. And he never even mentioned his child's situation ever again. He just stopped talking to his family. And I was just shocked, totally shocked by that. And so during those 3 years, he really catered to me. I'd come home, and he would, can I make you a tea? And he would warm my blanket up and snuggle me in bed. He would make sure my iPad was fully charged. The house was cleaned. And I thought, wow, here we go. I really think he's learned his lesson. Like, he's a different person. He really gets it this time. He knows he's close to losing us. And no, when that garnishment was lifted, right back to Mr. Egocentric, verbally abusive self, I couldn't believe it. But this time, I said, fuck you. You're not fooling me again. I'm not in for this ride. And also at that time, I had an inkling he was having affairs. Even though throughout my whole marriage, I would say he was definitely 100% loyal to me. And my friends, some of my friends still don't think he would have an affair on me. But so it gets even weirder, because this is where my children come into it. COVID hit. So we were home 24/7 together because, the school board just said, everybody go home. And we were off till 2 weeks after the March break, and then we'll decide what to do. And 2 weeks into it, I thought, oh my God, I can't retire with him. I can't even stand him. And I started to notice a lot of gaslighting. Now this time, my daughter was subtly sending me things through TikTok about narcissists. And my way to deal with stuff is to work, number one, and research. I love, like yours, podcasts. That's how I found your podcast. I love, Facebook groups. I love all the videos. And I started researching 24/7. I'm like a dog with a bone when I get on something like that. Like, I want to know what is happening and why it's happening. And I just thought, wow, here I am in the middle of this. And the gaslighting was unreal. Like, for example, and my daughter would point stuff out to me. Like, for example, we went one night and she loves ice cream. Can you take me for ice cream? I said, sure. We get there, I can't find my bank card. I always put my bank card in the same spot. I said, no big deal. I'll use my business card. So we get our ice cream, we come home. The next day, we're both in the kitchen. My bank card is magically in the same spot that I always keep it. And she's standing beside me. Now, my spouse is working on his computer. We can see each other from the room. And I said to him, did you take my bank card? No. And she nudges me. She's standing beside me. And I said, you sure you didn't take my bank card? And he automatically blames my son. No, you should ask, this child. I said, why would he take my bank card? So we go upstairs and we would giggle about it. And she'd be like, I told you, like, he lies about everything. Like, she had his number. Like, and so it was just unbelievable to me. And I'm thinking, all these years, I thought I was losing my memory. Like, I thought I always internalized everything and blamed myself. And I thought, I know he took that bank card. And I think he just took it because he wanted to that day, to make me think I was crazy. Like, the motives are ridiculous to me. So we get through that. So the one day, So I got called back to work because we had an essential daycare come back into our school. So that means that the custodians have to be in. So this was 2 or 3 months after COVID, like it was in full force. So anyways, I would go to work and all these people were emailing me saying, thank you so much for the masks. We really appreciate them. I'm thinking, who are you? So I came home and I was making masks because my mom is seamstress, and I was donating them to the hospitals, or I was giving them, I was making them for, local people that I knew, like a nurse. And I had a stash, little seniors in my town that needed masks. Well, he would put his cape on and he was delivering my masks out to people at work. And I didn't give him permission to do that. So now this time I'm getting stronger and stronger, and I've just had enough of the whole situation. And so I said to him, he comes home, he goes, how was your day? I said, it was weird because all these people were emailing me about masks. I said, I didn't give them any masks, and I would really appreciate it if you would not go into my sewing room and take my things. Well, he just got so discombobulated, and he called me a liar. He said, that's the stupidest effing thing you've ever said. You're pathetic. You're disgusting. And he's stumbling to the front door. He's so mad and so beside himself, and he's trying to get his boots on to go out the door. And I just started laughing at him. I just couldn't believe it. I thought, wow, you throw a boundary at you and you just lose it. And I honestly, I even laugh about it to this day. I just couldn't believe it. I thought, wow, how did I not see this years ago? See, before I would have internalized it and thought, he's just, like my child says, you make excuses for him. I would say to myself, he's just helping others. He's just trying to be nice. Yeah, at my expense. So he came back in and he yelled at me again and stomping his feet like he was in a real anger fit. So I just said to him, I said, he called me names. And my child was upstairs in the room. And so she was listening to all of this. He was calling me names, and I just said to him flat out, I said, I know where this goes from here. So I said, you just better settle down right now. Not only will I call the police, I'm going to call your 2 sons. And he went out and slammed the door, and I thought, I'm done here. Like, the kids are adults now. Like, at this point, my son is almost 25, and my other one's almost 23. And I thought, I'm done hiding all this stuff. None of us deserve to be treated like that. So I went out and made sure my daughter was okay. And she's crying, and she's saying that's verbal abuse, and I'm so sick of them treating you this way. And I said, you know what? I said, but just let's go down and get our shoes on. And I said, let's just go out. And I said, we'll just, at that point, things had opened up again. And I said, we're just going to walk around Walmart and just cool down. I just wanted to remove her from the situation. Well, he meets us in the driveway. And he verbally abused, then he throws some verbal abuse at me. And then he decides he's going to be the bigger person and tell me that it's my fault and I need to calm down, and how dare you behave like this in front of our child. And my child said something to him along the lines of, everything is your problem. And we got in the car and we left. So I sort of jumped ahead there because that was the deciding factor. I was leaving him. But before that, about 2 weeks before that, this is a very important part of the story. My child decided that she could not, while I was going to essential daycare, she could not stay in that house with him because she was off school. She said, Mom, do you think I could come with you? And I said, sure. I said, basically, I have to do nothing all day, just make sure they're okay and lock up and stuff. So I said, sure, they wouldn't mind. And the office is way far from the daycare area. So I said, no problem. So she came with me, and then the daycare left, and I cleaned their area. And then she said, can we go to the gym and just, play some basketball for a bit? I said, sure, we can, half an hour or so. Then I have to secure the building. So she gets me in the gym, and she just nails me. Like, what are you doing? This man has treated you X number of ways ever since I've remembered. And she started telling me things that he had done to her and her brothers. And apparently when I went to work, he abused them. When I came home, he was just so charming. And can I just make you a tea, babes? And can I do this for you and that for you? She goes, meanwhile, he abused us while you were gone. And she just said, she started giving me examples. Do you remember how we would grocery shop and he would just always manage to hit my heels with the back of the cart? And I'm like, yeah. She said, you'd make excuses for him. You'd say, oh, that's just your dad. And I'm like, oh my God, I do that. And then she, like, another example was, remember that day he called you at work? She said, what he didn't tell you was the dresser you painted for me. He brought it up to my room and he just threw it at me in the room and called me names. And then she got in her car and she left because she was so angry. Now at this point she's 18, and she said, this is really what happened, and why do you always make excuses for him? And it was just like, what's that word? Like a pivotal moment. And I thought, oh my God, she's right. And she said to me, you are the only one waiting for him to change. He will never change. And she told me then, she said, and this was the deciding factor, I'm leaving for university. She said, I know he's trying to prevent me from going. That's another part of the story. But she said, I am leaving. And if you're still living with him, I will not be back to visit you. And that just did it. In my mind, I thought, I've been protecting these kids, or trying to, not doing a great job, as I realize now. My whole life, they are my life, and he's nothing to me. He's nothing. And that made my decision that I was leaving. And so it was like, a couple of weeks had gone by, and at this point she has zero relationship with him. She refuses to talk to him in the house. She will not back. He tries to bully her and intimidate her all the time. She does not back down from him. During COVID, when we were all home, he doesn't know that. This is when I also started to see things. It's not that I didn't believe her, because I know deep down what kind of person he was. I didn't want to accept it. I watched him come in the house and just stand there and stare at her in the kitchen. I was sitting at the table, and so where the perspective is, he couldn't see me there, but I could see him doing that. And she said to him, stare at me all you want, bud. It doesn't bother me. He stood there and he stared for maybe another minute. It seemed like 5, but I'm sure it was just a minute. And then he said to her, get over yourself, kid. He goes out and slams the door. And I thought, oh my God, that's traumatizing to a child. So the subtle messages. But see, if I was home, he would never say that to her. He would never do that. But so now I understood totally what she was trying to tell me. When I'm away, so he didn't know I was there, that's what he does. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, what adult does that? That's just totally crazy to me. So, so then the verbal abuse happened in the driveway, and I went to my brother's that night, and I said I was leaving him, and I told him the whole story, and he was pretty annoyed and angry, and my child was with me, and she told him some things, and I was practically throwing up, and I was shaking and nervous, and he said, you need to go home and tell, your spouse this, and you tell him soon, and you're coming to live here if there's a problem. He said, you get it done. Enough of this. And I thought, oh my God, because I was still fearful of him deep down. But for some reason, I got up the next morning, and I, of course, was shaky. I didn't want to do it, but I did. I got dressed. I went right downstairs, and I said, we need to talk. And he came in the kitchen, and I said, I want a separation. I'm done. And he looked at me, and he said, yeah, it's time. And that was it. And I thought,
oh my God. Like, wow. So we started the process, and I tried to make it extremely amicable. And I told most of the friends who didn't know him that it was amicable. We had a lot of mutual friends, because I knew that if he ever got a glimpse of if I was going to tell the truth to anyone, he would make it totally miserable and stall for as long as he could. So he went through the whole thing. Like within 2 weeks, he was dating, and that didn't shock me. It didn't surprise me at all. I found, like, we had a joint account, and he was taking, dating sites, like he was paying for them through that account. So obviously he wanted me to know what he was doing, but he was living in the trailer or the driveway, so that was a bit better. But my child's anxiety was getting out of control, because he would come in, throw a hissy fit, leave. And it wasn't until I was away from him on a daily basis I saw actually how up and down his moods were, and the word salad. One day I got a full view of that, and I just thought, oh my goodness, my child was there beside me, and it was over, I walked by the trailer and I heard the air conditioning going. And so he came in the house, and I said, I was going to stay in the trailer, but you told me the air conditioning wasn't working. And he had this big drawn out thing about, I can't even make sense of it to repeat it. And I just looked at my child, and we went upstairs, and she said, what the hell does any of that mean? And I said, I have no idea. But I said, I'm glad that you're here, because, see, I realized when I look back, it would make me crazy. Like, I would start to think, because then he would say, oh, you twist things, and you talk in circles to me. And I realized it's not me, it's you. And that one child was an integral part of having me see the light. Like, I couldn't believe how smart that child was at 18. And she had everything she says that he was going to do, he's done to a T since that day on. 129%. She has on that peg. So we put our house up for sale. He had told me he was going to buy me out, blah, blah, blah. He dragged that out for almost 4 months. All of us knew he couldn't get the financing, but he had my hands tied because he wouldn't sit down and sign the realtor papers. So he finally comes to it. I confronted him, and one of his friends was here, so he finally had to agree to sit down and sign realtor papers. And I made him swear in front of his friend. So that's how I got the house listed. We sold it within a week, because my house is beautiful. Like, I'm a decorator. I make sure everything looks nice. And be outside, him and my son went at it, and he had rented the place. So I said, take all your tools and everything up there. The yard's clean. It looks good. We sold it within a week. Really good offer. It came to the home inspection, and I realized that he had cut the trusses out of the attic from the floor to the wall. Just removed them all. And so they didn't want to buy the house. So then we had to get a crew, like a framing crew, in to do all that. And then we had to get an architectural engineer to come in and stamp it. And this all goes back to, like, I just shake my head and think, this is, again, how much is that going to cost? Like, this is all money that we don't need to be spending. But this is what he does. Like, he creates every mess he has created on his own. So then I started looking around the house, and I realized he had tore the electrical panel apart. He didn't, cover over the dryer vent when he moved it. He shoved tile in it to cover the hole. It was just insane. He had all the drain pipes wrong. He told me he had cleaned out the eaves troughs and the gutters. Of course, that wasn't done. So my son and I did that one weekend. Just lie after lie after lie. Now I don't believe anything he says. I just look at him and I say to him, well, you're just a liar. And that infuriates him. He knows he has zero control over me. So my one child, who was planning on going to university, this is going on during the separation, and so we're in the kitchen one night, and the four of us are in there because we're all working on the house trying to get it ready for sale. And my one son starts telling about, the party he had on the weekend. He had a few friends over at our house, and how the one girl, two boys, and so she, was sleeping with one, and then ended up on the couch with the other, fully dressed. It was just, just kids being kids. And he decides he's going to speak up and say, well, she's a girl and she shouldn't be doing this. I've come to realize, too, he doesn't really like women. And I looked at him in front of the kids, and I never stood up for myself like this. And I said, you're really going to say something right now? Because we all know he's been dating. And he said, what? And I said, at least she's single. Well, he stormed out of the house, and we laughed. All three of us were laughing. And he came back in, and he threatened my child that was wanting to go to university, and he pointed his finger at her, and he said, you better stop it or things could be very difficult for you. So he was basically threatening to pull money. And she said, what's going to be difficult? I'll make things very difficult for you. She goes, go ahead and try it. Like, I cannot believe, like, the strength of this girl that I've raised. Like, and of course we're laughing and that makes it worse. And, you know, he's again, like, he goes out, he just slams the door and he went to his trailer, like up the road, and we were fine with that. But her and I were laughing because what he doesn't know is his power is gone. Like, as soon as I separated, we filed for her OSAP. And because of my income, she pretty well got most of her school paid for. And then I have extra money to help her with her residence and stuff. But we thought, you know, that's when we realized that he has zero power over us. We don't need him for anything. And it was a really good night. I think the three of us just sort of sat there and went, wow, like, he just thinks he's scary. None of us are afraid of him anymore. So my oldest son, he went through a really hard time. A year ago, he was suicidal. And at that time, I think I was so focused on my child that was molested. I was trying to help her through therapy. And he shows up with these issues. And I find it really interesting because I still wasn't quite putting it together at that time. So the one child who's abused by him is extremely strong and full out, you know, get lost, I'm not talking to you attitude. And the other child, like, he was also a target, the oldest. I think he probably got it worse. He was very emotionally abusive with him and always putting him down. And he suffers from low self-esteem. And I think finally everything came to a head for him. But he still couldn't say to me, this is what's happened. Like, he's such an introvert. Like, he just turned it all inside like I guess I did when I was a kid. And so he became suicidal, and so I was working 12-hour shifts, and he was approximately, you know, an hour away from me at that time. But my spouse was literally working within 15 minutes of his home. But I would have to say to my spouse, like, can you check on him? Do this today, check. And he would stop and check on him. So the one, I didn't know this night. Now I make sure I see him once a week, and he's past the rough part. And now he's told me, like, when I first saw Dad, he said, what the hell's your problem? He said, I looked at him and I pointed my finger and I said, you're the problem. My spouse came home and never even mentioned that conversation to me. And I thought, how does that happen? Like, if my child said that to me, I'd be devastated. I would do whatever I could to fix that situation. And that's another thing that's, like, I realized, you know, his relationship with the kids is his relationship, and it's not my job to fix it. Or, you know, like my daughter said, you used to always try to, you know, make excuses for him and try to, like, foster a relationship there. And she threatened me. She said, if you continue to do that, I'm cutting you off. I'm telling you right now, I'm 18. I'm going to do what I want. I want nothing to do with him. I want him out of my life. He's poison, and I feel like he clutters my mind. I can't focus when he's around, and I totally understand what she means by that. And so, again, I really just had to, like, you know, he's never going to be put above the children. So, and basically, I think that's it in a nutshell. I think I've probably come to the end. We're just currently trying to sell the house, and he comes in every once in a while and tries to play mind games with me. Like, you know, I lectured him about the stove again the other day, and then he gets mad because I won't, you know, answer him because I don't even know what his answer is. I don't even bother looking. So, you know, he comes in and he'll leave, like, you know, his current girlfriend's underwear in my underwear drawer. And I know they're not mine, but it doesn't bother me. It makes me giggle, actually, because I realize how desperate he is. And it makes me sad sometimes because I realize, you know, he's never going to think it's him. He'll never get himself help. This is how he's going to live his life. And he probably won't have a relationship with two of his kids anyways. His favorite still tries to see the best in him and tries to talk to him, and, you know, feels bad because he thinks he's lonely and stuff. And so I'm amazed at how quick, like, how fast I've come through that recovery, and I'm already at the other end. You know, I offered him counseling, and he just said to me, that's the pot calling the kettle black, because, you know, he's always said I'm the crazy one. And I said, well, there's 5 of us in this family, and 3 of us are in counseling. But apparently you don't need it, so. And I think that part just makes me sad sometimes because even though I shouldn't, I do think about the next poor girl's life that's because he can be very, very, so charming at the beginning and
so
like a wrecking ball.
You know, I've been sitting back here listening, and it's a sad. It's like sad doesn't do the story justice, and thank goodness, your daughter is remarkable, and
isn't she? I realized.
Sorry, continue.
I was just going to say it's funny because I've sort of restored a bit of faith in religion. I've never been overly religious, but she was sent to me for a reason. Like, she is remarkable. Like, her strength is just overwhelming. It's funny because I had the realization the other day, and it's how my kids have given me so much strength, and how I realized that all these little games and stuff that he plays right now, they mean nothing. He can't touch me. He can do nothing to me because I have my family.
And well, what I really wanted you to know, where you're 50 years old, and that 50 is the new 40 or the new 35, and you do have whatever has happened, and there's nothing we can do about it. But
right.
You still have the rest of your life to live, and the rest of your life to have a great relationship with your children. And, this is going to be the first time in your life very soon, when everything is really eventually all settled, that you're going to be drama-free for the most part.
Oh, yes. I can't wait.
In 32 years. And that you can start enjoying life again. You've gone through a lot of... you've lived a life here of, being under the thumb of someone else and having them... just be on top of everything, and the type of control that has been exerted over you you've been in jail for 32 years.
Yes.
And now you're free. And, it's something that you don't realize why you're going through it, like how this type of freedom, is... special, and to take advantage of the time we have left, and to just embrace everything. And you're a different person than you were before, and you're a better person than you were before, and that's something that's important for everyone to remember. A lot of us feel that we're damaged, or I won't be able to get this or get that, but we in a certain way we are better for going through a lot of these things, in the sense we have more empathy for people, and we care for people. And listening to you today, you're a wonderful, caring person. You're a good mom, and you just want what is best for people. And I want what's best for you. I was crying a couple of times during this when people didn't hear me talking. It was really emotional, and listening to you and what you've been through, I just hope that everything that happens for you going forward is special, and because you deserve it, and your daughter deserves it, and all of your children deserve good things coming their way. And obviously they'll have their issues as they get older, and a lot of the things that they learned or saw, and behaviors of how they survived might not work for them. They just don't know it yet, and they'll have to go through their own kind of growing pains of adjusting to, this is how a normal person acts in a relationship, and this is, they'll go through that and learn themselves, but you you'll be there, and you're going to be there for them, and you're a wonderful person. And I just really want to thank you for being here and sharing your story and being vulnerable with us. And there's a lot of lessons for everyone to learn from your life. So a big thank you for me. And I guess, before we continue, I guess, to the rest of the show or the end, where I guess do you go from here in the sense of healing? Like, are there certain things like dreams or stuff like that in your life that you're like, this is what I always wanted to do? And I guess the words of wisdom for others that are going through it too.
So it's funny, you can't see me right now, but I have this huge smile on my face because all of a sudden I'm dreaming again. I can't wait to get my little house. I'm going to purchase a house, and I'm going to work hard to pay down that mortgage, and I'm going to decorate it to the nines. I'm so excited because my son's going to move with me, because he sort of got lost by his dad in the shuffle, and I'm like, I can't wait. I'm so excited you're coming with me. I'm dreaming of decorating again, and I used to draw and paint, and I love to read, and I don't know, for once I just feel like I'm so excited about the future. Like, I realize now how depressed I was. Like, I don't have that feeling of doom. And I said to my kids, you don't understand how excited I am, because I'm now allowed to be the mother I always wanted to be, because he would always try to destroy those relationships. Like I said, if I want to take you out for dinner, I can. If I want to meet you, I can. And that's exciting. And I just love coming home and being by myself. I have no problem being by myself. And as far as the healing goes, it's really funny because, like, I have done therapy. I've been in therapy. And I probably will go back in about a year. Once I get settled, I want to make sure that, my head's on straight. But right now, I just feel like I'm so over it. Like, I see it clearly now, and what's done, like you said, what's done is done. It's time just to move forward. And it's just a little funny side story. I had a fella show up at my house about a month ago. He had heard I was separated, and he wanted to take me for coffee. And I went to high school with him, but I would never date him in high school because I was older than him, and I was too cool. So I always turned him down. And he knows where I live because it was my parents' house, right? We bought it. So nice guy and everything, but he got in that car to leave, and I thought the red flags were just falling out the window. I thought, not a chance in hell. Like, it's just not going to happen. And I was so proud of myself for recognizing signs, and I no longer feel like that true empath that, he was so insistent, I should just meet him for coffee. No, not meeting him. No desire. And so I thought, wow, I've really come a long way, and I've really learned. Like, I feel like the universe used to try to slap me in the head with all these signs, and I just refused to see them. But I truly see them now. And I think, and I do understand that meaning of, you really have to love yourself first. You have to fill yourself up first. And then you can fill those that you love around you. I never had that feeling before. So that's about it.
Well, Bailey, I really want to thank you for sharing your morning with me and, sharing your story with everyone who's listening. It really was an honor. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was an honor for me as well. And I really enjoy your podcast. It's so interesting to hear other people's stories.
Well, you're welcome. This is my life now. And one of my favorite things to do is really just to listen to stranger stories. Everyone has a story, and everyone can learn from everyone. So, thank you. And for everyone else who is still listening, I hope you have a good night.